Okay, guys, welcome to the first of what I hope to be many of these flipped lecture note sessions that I'm going to be assigning to you guys as homework. Hopefully this will be relatively painless, and you guys can come to class prepared for tomorrow. Remember that if you have any questions, make sure you write them down on your facts and questions sheet. I'll be checking that tomorrow. And make sure you fill out your notes as well. So we are continuing with biochemistry, but we are going to be entering topic 2, which is going to be about biological macromolecules. If you look at the word macro, okay, macro is another word for large. So when we're talking about biological macromolecules, we are talking about the large molecules that are required for biological processes. So if we start our slideshow here, we are in the realm of molecules. Okay, so last year we learned about protons, neutrons, and electrons and how they make atoms, and then how atoms form molecules. Now we're going to be learning about the actual importance of molecules in forming cells and cell organelles and cell structure and function. So that's where we are going to be progressing to. So there are 4 essential classes of macromolecules required for life. Those include carbohydrates, such as like breads, pasta, sugar. The second class is lipids, which are your fats and your oils. So, like a piece of fat on a steak, or like olive oil or type of vegetable oil that you guys use in cooking. Proteins, so for any of you guys that lift, or any of you athletes who need to replenish your protein stores so that you guys can build muscles. And then your nucleic acids, which are your hereditary material, such as DNA and RNA and stuff like that. We're going to be getting into that more later. But those are your 4 main classes of molecules, and we're going to look at each one of those in depth. So first, carbohydrates. This includes starches and sugars. Now, sugars you guys are familiar with because you like the sweets and stuff like that. But when we talk about sugars, I want you to think of their function being that they are used for short-term energy. So when you think of short-term energy, I think of like pixie sticks. I think I spelled pixie wrong, you know me. Okay, but pixie sticks, if you think about that, when you eat a lot of sugar, you instantaneously get a sugar rush from it. You get a lot of energy. Okay, so it's very short term, that your energy. And that is what we think of when we think of carbohydrates. Okay, the elements that make up carbohydrates, okay, they are known for having pretty much only carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, specifically in a 1 carbon to 2 hydrogen to 1 oxygen ratio. Okay, and that's why glucose is C6H12O6. Okay, another way of identifying your carbohydrates is that the names usually end in OSE. Okay, so OS. So we've got glucose, we've got lactose, and we've got fructose. Okay. And some common examples are like sugary foods such as fruit drinks, popsicles, ice cream, breads, those that contain your starches. Potatoes have a lot of starch, and pasta have a lot of starch. So these all are high foods that are high in carbohydrates. And this is your basic structure of carbohydrates. If you notice, and I'm going to be reiterating this many times, the basic structure of a carbohydrate is in the form of a ring. So if you notice, I am drawing the basic outline of a ring for this carbohydrate. Okay, so if you look at that, there's this gap in the middle. Okay, so if you look, it forms this basic ring structure, and that is very characteristic of carbohydrates and no other macromolecules that we'll be talking about. All right, so let's talk about the monomers of carbohydrates. Last week, we talked about how a monomer is a single molecule Okay, so the smallest subunit or smallest molecule or the building block. Okay, so when we're talking about monomers, we're talking about building blocks. So the building blocks of carbohydrates are these things called monosaccharides. Okay, again, mono meaning one. All right, and they are a single simple sugar molecule, and they consist of one ring. Okay, so one ring is a monosaccharide. So that famous glucose molecule is a monosaccharide. They are ring-shaped, as you can see. Again, if you shaded in this area here, you would notice that this is in the form of a ring. Okay, and they are the quickest way to get energy. So again, you get more energy instantaneously when you eat a lot of sugar versus when you eat pasta. Pasta takes a little bit longer for you to get the energy. Sugar is a very, very quick way to get energy. Now, carbohydrates also form dimers, and if you remember, di means two. So if you look here, we've got two rings. We've got one ring on the left here, and you've got another ring on the right. And they are formed by that COC bond that is formed as a result of dehydration synthesis. And this here is an example of sucrose. There's that OSE again, okay, which stands for, which is basically another name for table sugar. So what you put on the table in the morning when you're eating breakfast and eating cereal, and you put it on your cereal, that's table sugar or sucrose. So disaccharides are two monosaccharides that are chemically bonded together. So here's that chemical bond. And an example is sucrose, table sugar. Now, we've done monomers, we've done dimers, and now let's do the polymers of carbohydrates. Okay, and there are many, many different polymers of carbohydrates. But the most characteristic thing that you need to know is that instead of having just one or two, you have one, two, three, or as many as you want. Okay, you can have thousands and thousands of sugar molecules chemically bonded together. So polysaccharides are made of long chains of monosaccharides. Starches are used for storage of food molecules. So those are found in like potatoes and plants like breads. Okay, so the wheat that makes up bread has a lot of starch in it. And they can be broken down, which you guys can probably guess is through the process of hydrolysis, into its monomers. So glucose can be obtained from your polysaccharide simply by hydrolysizing your chain of molecules. Another example is cellulose, and again, we're talking OSE, so it is a carbohydrate. So is starch, but that's one of the few exceptions. And cellulose is what forms cell walls. We can't break this down, okay, but it is still made of sugar molecules, believe it or not. So if you felt like going out and gnawing on a piece of bark, it wouldn't really taste that sweet because we can't break it down into its sugar components, but it is still made of sugar. And the last type of polysaccharide is called glycogen, and that is the starch that animals make and store in the liver. That's a very important thing, and we'll get into a little bit more about glycogen when we talk about diabetes later in the year. So here I have a little video for you, and it's just going to show you the polymerization of a polysaccharide from monosaccharide components. So if you look, again, we have our notable ring structure here. My computer's flipping out a little bit, so you'll be able to notice that. But if you look at the ring structure, you'll see that these are the monosaccharides. These are each glucose molecules. Okay, so these glucose molecules right now are not chemically bonded together. and therefore they are monomers. Okay, what they are going to do in a minute here is you're going to show you the formation of a polysaccharide through the process of dehydration synthesis. And that's not it, don't worry. That's just the animation. Okay, so here you go. If you notice, all right, you have monosaccharides coming in, and you have water molecule coming out, and that is the process of dehydration synthesis, which we have talked about. But if you notice, as you add more and more and more, you get a longer chain of carbohydrates, and this is a polymer or polysaccharide. All right, so let's take a look at starches versus sugars when we talk about the structure. Okay, so you've got sugars, which are just individual rings. Okay, they're not chemically bonded together. Okay, and they are used for quick energy, meaning our body can break them down very quickly. On the other hand, you have starches, which are long chains of those sugars that are chemically bonded together. Okay, and these can be hundreds of thousands of sugar molecules long. So they are relatively large compared to their components. What I like to think of starches are, they're like the brick wall. Okay, whereas your sugars are your bricks. You need just a couple individual sugars to add and continue to build your starch molecules. Okay, now as you can see, because starches are a little bit larger, they're probably going to take a little bit more time to break down. And that's why when you eat pasta and you then go and play football or basketball or whatever sport you play, if you eat pasta right beforehand, you're not going to get a lot of energy from it. You need to actually eat it the night before. And the reason is because over the period of time where your body digests, it starts to break those bonds in the starch and break it into the usable form and convert it into sugar. So digestion converts your starches back into sugars. So what we can basically say is that the more chemical bonds that a molecule has, the more energy that can be released when carbohydrates are broken down. So which molecule is stored more energy, glucose or starch? Well, this has a lot of chemical bonds, correct? However, one glucose molecule doesn't have nearly the number of chemical bonds that 3 glucose molecules does. Okay? Because more sugars equals more bonds. Okay? I believe this is the last slide that you need to fill out. Let me just check. Okay? And next time we're going to be going into lipids, which is fats and oils, but that will be next lecture. Okay? So come up with your facts and questions. If you need to watch this again, go right ahead. Okay, make sure you have both your notes and your facts and questions filled out. I will be checking them tomorrow for homework. Okay? Have a great night, guys. Bye.